This is my bear corral out here.
You find bears?
Yes, and of course there's no steps going down. So what happens is that they manage to climb up over, and then they get the bird feeders or whatever.
Wow.
And then they realize that there's no way to get down.
Uh-huh.
So they start pacing back and forth and back.
Oh,
and forth.
no.
And that's when I start getting nervous because I think they're going to try to come through the sliding glass doors.
How do you finally get rid of them?
But anyway, well, you can see here, I've got some pretty nice residual impacts from the bears. See, there are their claws.
Yeah.
So they do figure out how to get back over, but they're very adept, very agile. They're pretty incredible. Yeah. Then I had one that he was so funny. He came over here. He looked down the hole here, and he thought, "Oh my gosh, I can get down there." And so he stood like this with his feet right against here, and he goes like this, and he's trying to squeegee down in between to get off the deck. That was kind of cute. But they're just like a person in a bear suit. You know, the way they act and their dexterity with their fingers and their thinking. You know, they're pretty amazing what they can do. So yeah, I can't say I get them regularly. More so in the early spring when they're looking for food, and that's usually when I stop feeding.
You don't have any house pets that you'd be afraid of?
I have no house pets. No house pets.
Have you ever had house pets?
Turtles.
Turtles?
I had turtles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I let them go. I started feeling sorry for them, and I felt it was selfish keeping them. So.
Were they big turtles? I've seen huge turtles in Falls Village.
They were native turtles here, like that. Just about the big. But favorite food was earthworms and slugs. They loved slugs. They were their favorite food. They would eat them, and of course they're all sticky and gooey, and so then they would take their paws and claws and go like this to clean their face off afterwards. Believe it or not, turtles have personalities.
No kidding.
They really have personalities. They do. Each one is different, and they can really interact with people. They knew when they saw me that it was food time, and of course you had to kind of watch out for your fingers, though, because they'd get overzealous once in a while. And
what kind of turtles were they?
They were box turtles, which people would bring to me because they would find them on the roads. And the state, for the longest time, was saying that any box turtle that you find around here is a released pet that someone had for a pet. And I mean, I've seen so many out in the wild that's not true. I think they're finding out that more box turtles can survive the winters up here. So that was the critical thing. They need to get down, burrow down below the frost line, and it's so rocky in northwestern Connecticut that typically they can't find 3 feet of soil so they can burrow down far enough. But I think what happens is they go to the swamps, and there it's unlimited as to how far down they can burrow. I think they winter in the swamp or a swampy area.
Oh, so they go under the earth for the winter.
They do not eat one thing for the winter. What I used to do is, because I wanted them to have a fairly natural life cycle, so I would put them down in the basement. I had a huge box with chips in it, wood chips, and you knew when it was time for them to go down because they'd stopped eating. And so I'd put them down in there, and all winter long, they I don't know if it's a true hibernation, but they definitely, their metabolism slows down a real lot. And,
yeah.
And then about April, they start coming alive again, and they're ready to eat. Yeah, pretty cool.
What do they eat? Grass? Greens?
No, mostly
lettuce,
worms, slugs, and they also love melon.
Oh,
melon.
I do too.
Loved melon. So,
yeah.
Those were the 3 primary foods I fed them.
Yeah.
And lettuce. They would eat some lettuce, but that wasn't their favorite.
Okay, I'm going to swing around here to the left
Go
and
ahead.
get what a gorgeous view.
And of course you can see in the center of the ridge up there, do you see what I see?
A tower?
Yes!
Yeah.
That, believe it or not, is over in Sharon, at the intersection of Sharon Mountain Road and East Street in Sharon. It's a cell tower. And I can remember the first day I saw it out there, I was reduced to tears. As you probably know, our Inland Wetlands Conservation Commission spent the better of 3 years fighting the cell tower that was proposed for Cobble Hill in Falls Village.
Yeah.
And we just felt that the adverse impacts far outweighed the benefits from that. And we fought against AT&T, and we won, which is pretty unheard of. You know, the little guy usually doesn't win against big AT&T, but we were very diligent. We had some devoted people to the cause, and we worked hard, and we won. There was going to be, now I forget specifically how long the driveway was, but I think it was more than 4,000 feet long, this driveway was going to be, to get up there. And, I mean, just that in itself, I mean, lends to all kinds of invasive species, plant species, making their way up through, just whether it's by construction equipment or the servicing vehicles that would have to come up regularly. You're making tunnels into what is really uninterrupted canopy. And you start, though their actual spot was only going to be, I don't know, 200 by 200 feet or something, the intrusion, really would have impacted that whole hill. And plus, the soil is so shallow up there that any kind of runoff that they would create, it's just going to cause an increase of runoff. And of course, it's where they were siting it. Originally, it was going to be just up above 63, which is close to the Hollenbeck River. So, I mean, there was just, and it's really right next to Robin Swamp, which is the largest inland wetlands in the state of Connecticut, and boasts the most rare and endangered plant and animal species in the state. So I think it was all those things factored in, and the state owns much of Robin Swamp.
So you're on the Inland
Wetlands Conservation Commission.
Conservation
yeah. Actually,
Commission.
I think, gosh, how long? Maybe, I think I've been on it since early or mid-'80s, so probably close to 30 years. I'm getting old.
No, you're not.
I'm getting old.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't look it. Your birthday is tomorrow, isn't it? We don't talk about that.
It is.
Congratulations.
61, actually.
Good for you.
61. Yeah, but I'm still running around the countryside.
Yeah.
Running up mountains.
Yeah.
Almost every day. Yeah.
Good. Shall we talk about that a little bit? The work that you do?
What do I do? Well, first of all, I'm a state of Connecticut licensed forester. All foresters in Connecticut, if they want to practice, they now have to be licensed. The state of Connecticut realized that all the residents of Connecticut benefit from keeping our lands undeveloped, large parcels, open space, for many reasons. Anyway, the thought was with the state that they wanted to enact some legislation that would allow people with large parcels of land to have some kind of tax abatement. So what the state has requires now is if you want to put your land in this program, you have to hire a certified forester to go out, walk your property, and the state has set forth all these criteria that would enable that criteria as to what would make your land qualify as forest land. For example, there has to be so many trees per acre. in no place can it be less than 100 feet wide. If you have ponds greater than a half an acre, you would have to leave those out of the forest land classification. So there's all these criteria. So yes, a new landowner comes into town and they have, let's say, 50 acres, and they want to take advantage of this tax abatement program. They call me, and I go out and I systematically walk their property. Of course, after first, finding their property lines, and you make a pretty well figured out. You want to make sure you walk the entire property, basically. So you go back and forth, crisscross it, and taking plot samples, okay, to help you figure out how many trees per acre there are. And if there's more than so many trees per acre, yes, it qualifies for forest land. And it doesn't take very many trees to qualify.
Uh-huh.
But we also are required to come up with a map for the people, which I have a map in there if you want to see what.
Sure.
And on that map, we have to show the different stand types that are on the people's properties, just so that they have a little better idea of what they own. And we have to give a little blurb about each stand type, and should they, if they want to, do anything on their forest land, make some recommendations as to what suggested treatments that they might want to do. And basically, since the landowners are getting a tremendous benefit in taxes by putting their land in this, the state feels, okay, we're giving you a break. You have to commit to keeping your land in forest land for 10 years. And if you, like, say in year 6, if you decide for whatever reason you're going to sell off a part or whatever, there is a penalty involved with it. But typically that penalty, like say if you were to turn around and sell it, typically what the people do is they tack that penalty on to the selling price or something,
right,
to pay the town,
right,
for it. It's still very rarely, I feel, would it not be to the benefit of a landowner. I pretty much limit my work to northwestern Connecticut, because by the time you drive, well, even if I were to go to Roxbury, which I have done some in Roxbury, by the time you get there, then you may have to walk a half a mile out into the woods to get to the property.
Yeah.
And then you have to walk out at the end of the day, drive home. It's just not worth it. So, and there's probably 100 foresters around the state, so I limit. I mean, I love doing the 6 towns. I feel most comfortable, because when you go somewhere that you really are so totally unfamiliar with, and to then go out in the middle of the woods, and I work by myself, it can get a little unnerving, especially now with the bears and, and then, I did, quite a few years ago now, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, I was doing one of these jobs and I did break my leg out in the woods. So
no.
I had to crawl out on my hands and knees. It took me 4 hours to crawl out of the woods. And then I drove myself to the hospital with a broken leg. And now I'm thinking, I'm driving down the road saying, oh yeah, I've walked that entire mountain ridge. I've walked that mountain ridge. I've walked that mountain ridge, and not many people can really say that, So I really feel that I've been blessed. And I mean, I'm out in the woods pretty much all the time. And I feel today we need more of that, because there's just something magical when you're out in the woods. Something that takes place, something comes over you, and you're one with nature. And I think that's what we need more of. We need to know where man fits in the whole ecological spectrum. And I think being out in the woods, when you come across these huge, 50-inch diameter oak trees that have been there probably 250 years. It's rare, but you do find them. You are just so humbled as far as man's existence on Earth. I mean, it's...
How did you get interested in all of this?
Well, actually, you know, probably not one thing in particular, but, you know, I was one of 5 children, and we grew up in a very, very tiny house in Falls Village, and, you know, we didn't even have a television for much of our youth, and a very small house, very tiny, for 7 people. And most of our time, as a result, was spent outside. That's where we had our individual space. We didn't have it inside. I shared a bedroom with 2 sisters, and it was a 10 by 10 bedroom. You know, so our personal space was the outdoors. I guess maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, but we spent pretty much all our time outside, playing in the woods. But then, let me see. Well, I went to college and I majored. I thought I was going to be a lawyer or something. I was going to major in government, but I took a intro to biology course. You know, you had to take so many sciences, and I just really liked the intro to biology, and so I took another course. And then second year, I took the second year courses and decided I was going to major in biology. So I kind of started thinking, well, I could become an expert on great horned owls or something, but I thought, you know what, maybe it would be more important for me to focus more on preserving the land. So I applied and I got accepted at Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. So I got a master's there. And kind of the rest is history. I ended up coming home, and I worked for, at that time, the headquarters for all of National Audubon sanctuaries were at Miles Sanctuary on West Cornwall Road in Sharon, not at the Sharon Audubon Center, but there's a Miles Sanctuary. And so I worked for that office for a while. And then at that time, my grandparents, who lived up on Route 7, they were beginning to age. They were aged and beginning to need help. So I ended up kind of moving in with my grandparents and took care of them pretty much for about 13 years.
Wow.
So I ended up staying in Falls Village.
Uh-huh. How long have you lived here on Music
Up here, the house was built in 1988, I think. So, but however, that's when we built it. I did not get married to Berkeley until 1995. So, and my grandfather died in 96, I think. So that's when I moved up here. So.
Do you have any kids?
No. I have 5 stepchildren.
5 stepchildren?
Berkeley had 5 children. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Yeah.
And he's passed away, has he?
Yes. Yeah, he had Parkinson's.
Oh, and so you took care of him too, I'm sure.
Yeah. So my grandfather died. I moved up here with Berkeley. Berkeley and I actually got married while I was still taking care of my grandparents. Yeah. We got married out here. And my friends Bill and Lynn Fox were here. My parents didn't know or anything. We kind of eloped. And I was still living with my grandfather. And my grandfather was beginning, I think, to feel that he was like 96 at this point, and he was beginning to feel that he was keeping Berkeley and me from getting married. So what we decided to do, we thought, well, we'll just go get married, and I'll still live up with Grandpa, which is what I did. We got married, and
What year did you get married?
I knew you would ask me that.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
I think it was 95.
Uh-huh.
I think it was 95. Yeah. And then he died in 2008 or 2007. I don't know. I'm bad with years.
So
I don't remember trivial things.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Good.
So yeah, when you're out in the woods, you go into another whole world. And I feel so fortunate because, I mean, I come across charcoal beds, which are remnants of our charcoal industry that we had here. And they draw me like a magnet. I don't think I have ever come across a charcoal bed in the woods that I haven't felt compelled to go up to, walk across, walk around, look around to see if anyone had left anything behind, you know, from the late 1800s or whatever. And, where do I have them? Oh, they might be upstairs. Well, it doesn't matter. But last fall, I was bringing in firewood here. And kind of down near the bottom of my driveway, I have a charcoal bed. Have seen this charcoal bed every time I drive by it. Well, but I was getting firewood in, and so I was going up and down the slope with my toboggan full of firewood coming down the slope. And there was this big rock about 10 feet away from the charcoal bed, and for some reason I sat down on that rock. Probably it was because my load was so heavy I had to take a break. And I looked down, and halfway underneath, it was one rock on top of another, I found 2 old wedges that had been left behind from a collier who had been out in the woods making charcoal.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the feeling I had. I said to myself, this is the best thing that has happened to me all year long. Finding those 2 wedges. It just, I don't know how people, I know how they survive, but I just feel
Wedges go into the tree to help
directionally fall the tree.
Right.
Yeah, it was, he obviously had sat down exactly on that same rock like I did, and put his wedges down and left them, forgot them. Because back then you didn't leave stuff like that behind. Those were his bread and butter. That's what he used.
Do you still have those wedges?
I do. I could find. What, do you want to see them?
I would love to see
All right,
them.
I can get them for you.
Okay.
Here's my prized possession.
Oh, look at that.
And I mean, just for me to be able to touch them and to wonder about, it's just so humbling, to know that I'm the only other person who has touched these since that man who was in the woods, who left them there, touched them. Anyway, this is you can almost see the charcoal bed right here. It's level. So what you look for is it's as level as flat as a pancake, and it's usually 20 to 30 feet in diameter. A big circle. And what this is, it's mostly consistent of old charcoal. And what they would do is
they made a teepee.
A teepee
right.
and burnt the wood down into charcoal, and it was the charcoal that they took out of the woods. When you're out in the woods, you go into another whole world.